Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind howling around you, your pulse throbbing in your ears. Below you, the rocks are jagged, unforgiving. And yet, there's a pull, an almost magnetic urge to step closer, to peer over the edge, until your toes curl over empty air. Your stomach lurches, your mind screams danger, but something deeper, quieter, whispers yes. Now shift the scene. You're alone at night, scrolling through your phone, thumb hovering over their name, the one who left you hollowed out, the one whose words still carve fresh wounds. When you replay them, you know the text will go unanswered. You know the pain will return like a tide. But you type anyway. You send it. And as the message disappears into the void, you feel it again, that strange, sick satisfaction. Why? Why do we crave the things that ruin us? Why does the alcoholic reach for the bottle even as his body fails? Why does the betrayed lover return to the liar's arms? Why do we chase the very things that leave us gasping, broken, questioning our own sanity? This isn't just about bad habits or weak willpower. This is about a fundamental paradox of human nature. We are drawn to what harms us, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. The toxic relationship, the self-sabotage, the vices we swear to quit. They cling to us with a grip, stronger than reason, stronger than survival instinct. What if the pain isn't an accident? What if it's the point? Think of the last time you indulged in something you knew would hurt you. There was a moment, wasn't there? A split second where the ache felt like proof of being alive, proof of feeling something in a world that often feels numb. Pain, in its twisted way, becomes a perverse kind of comfort. It's familiar, it's honest. It doesn't lie to you the way hollow pleasures do. But here's the real question, the one that will unravel everything you think you know about desire. What if the thing you're truly craving isn't the poison itself, but the chaos it brings? What if the hurt is just a distraction from something far more terrifying? The answer is waiting. But first, you have to stare into the dark. Welcome to the Philosopher's Night. Let's dive into this amazing episode of control, balance, and indulgence. And do hit the subscribe button. So, here we go. The dark doesn't stare back, it leers. It whispers in a voice so intimate, you mistake it for your own. Go ahead, it says. You know you want to. And you do. Not because you're broken, not because you're weak, but because you are human, and humans are wired to seek out the very things that unravel them. But why? Because pain is not just an accident of poor choices. It is a signal. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The shadow, according to Jung, is the part of us we refuse to acknowledge, the desires we bury because they don't fit the story we tell about ourselves. When we reach for what harms us, we are not acting against our nature. We are acting in service to it. We are feeding the hidden hunger, the one we dare not name. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this. He wrote of the will to power, but buried beneath that drive was something more unsettling, the will to destruction. Not just the destruction of others, but of ourselves. We flirt with ruin because in some perverse way, it makes us feel real. Without it, we might dissolve into the numbness of an unchallenged existence. Think of the addict, who swears this is the last hit, even as their hands shake. Think of the lover who returns to the one who crushes them, again and again. This is not mere compulsion. It is a negotiation with chaos. Arthur Schopenhauer saw it first. Life oscillates between boredom and suffering. And when given the choice, humans will choose suffering every time. Because suffering at least means something. But here's the twist, the thing that makes this so insidious. We don't crave the pain itself, we crave the aftermath. The moment when the storm passes, and we are left standing in the wreckage, surveying the damage. In that moment, we are alive in a way ordinary existence can't match. The hangover, the heartbreak, the regret, they are proof that we felt something, that we mattered enough to be hurt. Jean-Paul Sartre called it bad faith, the lies we tell ourselves to avoid the terrifying freedom of choice. Because if we admit that we choose our suffering, then we must also admit that we could choose otherwise. And that is far more frightening than any pain. So we return to the cliff's edge, to the text we shouldn't send, to the drink we shouldn't pour. Not because we are fools, but because, in some hidden chamber of the mind, we believe the hurt is the only thing keeping us from disappearing entirely. But what if that's the greatest lie of all? The truth is coming. But first, you must face what your cravings have cost you. The cost is never just yours. It ripples outward, a stone thrown into still water, distorting everything it touches. You tell yourself it's your pain to bear, your secret, your burden, but the lie festers. The late-night binges, the toxic relationships, the self-sabotage, you disguise as passion. They don't exist in a vacuum. They shape you. And in shaping you, they shape the world around you. Neurologically, it's a closed loop. Every time you return to what harms you, your brain rewires itself to crave the cycle, not the substance. The dopamine hit isn't in the pleasure, it's in the relief from the withdrawal. The anxiety before the text is sent, the gnawing guilt before the relapse, the hollow euphoria after your mind begins to mistake the crash for the high. You are no longer chasing happiness. You are chasing the moment when the chase itself briefly stops. Culturally, we've turned this into a perverse virtue. Think of the tortured artist, the brooding genius, the lover who suffers beautifully. We romanticize the very patterns that destroys us, because they feel like proof of depth. But this is a myth, one that keeps us trapped. Aldous Huxley warned of a society distracted by its own suffering, mistaking intensity for meaning. And here we are, spinning in circles, convinced that if it hurts, it must matter. But the real consequence is this: you forget what peace feels like, not the absence of pain, but the presence of something quieter, steadier. The kind of calm that doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Over time, your tolerance for stillness erodes. Silence becomes unbearable. Solitude feels like abandonment, and so you run back to the noise, the drama, the familiar sting, because at least it's something. Worst of all, you start to believe this is all there is. That happiness is a myth for simpler minds. That contentment is surrender. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. But what happens when the only meaning you can find is in the suffering itself? You become a ghost, haunted by the life you could have lived, if you hadn't spent so much time feeding the very thing that eats you alive. But there is a way out, and it doesn't start with fighting the craving. It starts with understanding the void you're trying to fill. The revelation is closer than you think. But first, you must ask yourself, what if the thing I'm really hungry for isn't pain, but power? The void cannot be filled, only understood. That is the first and the most brutal truth of all. You have spent years throwing everything into it: love, substance, validation, only to watch them disappear into the dark, without a sound. But what if the void was never the problem? What if the problem was what you were taught to throw into it? Rebellion begins with a single, blasphemous thought: what if I stopped feeding the beast? Not through willpower, not through shame, but through something far more radical: indifference. The alcoholic doesn't break free by hating the drink. He breaks free the day the drink stops meaning anything to him. The heart doesn't heal by force. It heals when the absence of the toxic lover finally feels like peace. History's greatest emancipators, from Buddha to Nietzsche to Frankl, understood this paradox. Freedom isn't won by fighting desire. It's won by transcending it. The ancient Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy, but a state where the hooks of craving simply lose their grip. Imagine standing in a hurricane and realizing, for the first time, that you are not the one being torn apart. You are the eye of the storm, untouchable, unmoved. Here's how it works. Stop romanticizing your pain. The poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But he never said you must keep the wound open forever. Your suffering is not your art. Your chaos is not your identity. The moment you stop mythologizing your own destruction, it loses its power over you. Let boring save you. The most subversive act in a world addicted to intensity is to choose the mundane. Eat the meal without distraction. Sit in silence, without reaching for your phone. Walk without a destination. Boredom is the detox your soul has been begging for. Redirect the hunger. The craving is an energy, wild, untamed energy. The difference between a monk and an addict isn't the absence of desire. It's where they point it. Take the fury you once spent on self-destruction and aim it at creation. Write, run, build. Let the hunger that once devoured you become the engine of your reinvention. Become ungovernable. Every advertisement, every algorithm, every toxic relationship in your life profits from your suffering. They need you hooked on the drama, the lack, the next hit. So starve them. Be dull, be free. Watch as the world that once thrived on your pain scrambles to adjust to your newfound indifference. This is not recovery, this is a revolution. But the final truth, the one that changes everything, is still waiting. It's simpler than you think and more terrifying, because it requires you to admit that the cage was never locked. You were just afraid to walk out. Here it is, the secret you've been circling your whole life. You don't crave what hurts you. You crave the control it gives you over your own suffering. Think about it. The drink, the toxic love, the self-sabotage, they are all chosen pain. And chosen pain is easier than the terrifying uncertainty of unchosen joy. When you orchestrate your own suffering, you become both the prisoner and the warden. You may rattle the bars, but deep down, you find comfort in knowing exactly where the walls are. This is the ultimate paradox of human desire. We cling to our miseries because they make us feel like authors of our own fate, even if the story we're writing is a tragedy. The German poet Hölderlin understood this when he wrote, "Where the danger is, grows the saving power also." The very thing that wounds you contains the key to your liberation, but only if you're willing to see it for what it truly is. You are not addicted to the poison. You are addicted to the ritual of antidote and venom, the dance of cause and effect, the illusion that you are in charge of your own destruction. But true power doesn't come from controlling your suffering. It comes from realizing you never need it in the first place. So what now? You stand at the cliff's edge one last time. The wind howls, your pulse thrums. But this time, you notice something you've never seen before. The ground below isn't a threat. It's just ground. The fall was never inevitable. The craving was never fate. It was always just a choice, one you've made 1,000 times, without realizing you could choose differently. And so you step back. Not with a dramatic flourish, not with the weight of 1,000 resolutions, but with the quiet simplicity of someone who finally understands. The door was open all along. The addiction wasn't to the pain. It was to the idea that pain was necessary. Now you know better. Now you walk away. And for the first time, the absence of craving feels like the most profound freedom of all. Thanks for looking. Do subscribe.